Bomatum, Ahom, Mawika, Daka, Tureygua, Taino, Kai. Did it record? Thy way, Tao, thy way, brothers and sisters. Thy way, Datiao Atiao. Hahom, thank you for being here. I am Cacique Tureygua Taino Kai, and I'm here to present a lecture entitled Cosmic Systems of Balance and Viability. We burn sage, clear the energies and make the energies right. In understanding this lecture of cosmic systems of balance and viability, we have to understand that there is an order to the world. There's an order to the planet. There's an order to every form of life. There is an order to everything that grows. There is a frequency. There is a growing in spiral systemic order, and it has to be adhered to and understood. Knowledge versus beliefs. A belief is a concept, attitude, or perception of information used when there is not enough information to hold on to. When there is not enough information to anchor the perception of reality with confidence or security of outcome, you form a belief. Knowledge is fact that can be confirmed through logical deduction of cause and effect. Knowledge creates security and confidence. Where there is security, there is no fear to take action. Knowledge dissolves fear. And this is the work of Hon Radine Harris Pitts, talking about viable knowledge. Now, the knowledge of our ancestors is the knowledge of our creed, the knowledge of our place, the knowledge of the order of our ancestral lands and their reality. We know that our ancestors lived harmoniously in their environment. We know that they had green lifestyles. We know they knew of divine frequency. And when we talk about frequency, we got to understand a frequency is energy in motion, a wave. It goes up, it goes down. It peaks and it stops. And it peaks and it stops. And so this is what frequency is how often something happens, the iteration, the cadence of frequency of a flow of energy. And they understood this. They based their lifestyles off of divine frequency, the pulse in a rhythm of the planet, a rhythm of living, of sowing and reaping, of planting, of living in divine order with the sun and the moon. And this led to their understanding of cosmic calendars. So they knew there's a divine frequency, and they knew that that pulsed through everything, and they knew that the planets moved, and they knew that there was a frequency to how that happened. They knew there was a frequency to how they reproduced. They understood working with this frequency to provide their sustenance and their planting, and they understood the divine order, and they understood number 13. I mentioned 13 because we find it in everything that has to do with divine order. We operate on a different value system than Western civilization, than the Gregorian calendar. We operated on a different set of knowledge. So today we believe in a system of a Gregorian calendar, and we believe in our system of economics, of free enterprise, commercialism, but we know it to be true that we live on a planet. We know it to be true that we're part of a solar system, and we know it to be true that there is natural order and divine symmetry, frequency, in order to everything. This brings us to nature and order and the understanding and concept of the golden ratio. This is called in other names by Fibonacci sequence. This is understood to be geometric ratios, frequency, and measurements, and understanding of what exists. So the golden ratio is a frequency, a formula, a kind of interval, a cadence to creation. It goes by the orders of 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Each term in a sequence is simply the sum of the preceding term. The quotient of these terms is 1.618, or inverse of 0.618. This proportion is known by many names. It's the golden ratio, pi, the golden mean, and divine proportion. Male and female ration in any beehive is 1.618. That is the difference from male to female. For example, in a plant of aloe vera or in a sunflower, the opposing seed spirals all equal 1.618. It is found in the human body in our proportion to our limbs and our brain and our heads and the composition of our physical order. So when we talk about this order, we understand that there's systems of viability, what can be and what can't be, what is and how it works in this plane. So we'll explore Beer's model of viability in context to indigenous communities and families and identity. A viable system model, VSM, is a model of the organizational structure of any autonomous system capable of reproducing itself. A viable system is any system organized in such a way as to meet the demands of a changing environment and reproduce perpetually. So we're talking about living systems, forests. We're talking about animal kingdoms. We're talking about the animals themselves. We're talking about the systems that support the growth of plants, the bees, the animals who prey on other animals and keep a divine order in order for the whole system to continually perpetuate itself. Are we not human beings? Are we not people? Are we not on this planet? And are we not working within nature and part of nature? Are we here to dominate, to crush nature, to strip everything bare on this planet and then try to get off of this rock and find somewhere else to go do the same thing? Is that a viable, sustainable way to live life? Well, I think we're starting to understand today that everything in our current paradigm and MO modus operandi is not sustainable. It comes in a parasitic fashion in spite of. Man feels himself real big. He, in spite of nature, he conquers nature and destroys nature based on this Western mode of thought. And this leads to what? It leads to a lack of viable systems because we have to understand that man cannot be in spite of nature. Man cannot dominate nature. Man is in the environment of Turtle Island, in the environment of the earth, and has to learn how to operate within it, not conquer it because it grows around him. Not try to destroy it and change the systems because it creates other systems. Because it's conscious. Everything is conscious. Everything is alive. All the birds, the bees, the trees, even the stone as it forms in some way is alive because it's operating by contracts and laws of nature. So we have to understand that in order for us as human beings with our own identities, as tribal groups, as ethnic groups, in order for us to be viable systems, in order for us to continue to perpetuate ourselves, we have to meet the demands of a changing environment, and we have to learn to produce perpetually by having an organizational structure capable of reproducing itself and understanding where it is, when it is, why it is, and what is going on. This brings us back to phenotype. Again, you've heard me talk about phenotype. A phenotype is what helps us to understand what is in us. and how we apply to nature, how our bodies work within the systems of nature, and why they are the way that they are. A genetic contribution to the phenotype is called the genotype. So the phenotype absorbs and forms the genotype, which is within us, and is how our DNA learns from our experiences. Some traits are largely determined by the genotype, while other traits are determined by environmental factors because it's adapting to the environment. So what we find on this planet, and we start to understand, is that there's nature, and the most abundant perceivable thing for us to perceive in our environment is the green, the chlorophyll, which is that substance within the plant that runs all its metabolic systems and timing and gives it its frequency. This is what allows the plant to process through photosynthesis to extract energy from the environment, from the light, and to turn that into cells that grow consciously and move consciously in a form towards more light, towards producing oxygen, and towards fulfilling its function in nature. What we have to understand is that there is a mammalian equivalent to this substance. There is an equivalent in animals or in life forms of a different form than plants that follow the same process. Now, the chlorophyll allows this environment to sustain life because it creates the oxygen and the divine balance of those environmental factors which allow us to consume, to process oxygen, and to live. Saying that melanin is our key to understanding our place in our cosmic order. Melanin is like the chlorophyll in the plant in that it keeps that divine frequency and that timing and that understanding of time that creates metabolism. Melanin has an ability to conduct electricity like gold. It switches on and off like a circuit when voltage is applied. It is very sensitive to the frequencies and interprets those frequencies through the melanin, through the outer covering of our skin, and through the melanin in our organs, which gives us our frequency to how the organs operate in divine order within the human organism. It regulates its own charges. And in this future, which we're going into with transhumanism and cyborg and android kind of paradigms where people are trying to figure out how to be superhuman, how to transcend the limitations of their bodies. They're going into electrical circuitry. But melanin is the conductor between the artificial and the organic. So we have to understand the wealth that we're given in our different forms of melanin in our human existence. There's mankind, many different names and understandings of people and how the races exist. But we have to understand that within each form of our human iteration, there is varying degrees of melanin and how melanin functions. But it gives us our understanding of order in our environment. And it's in our blood and it's part of our bloodline. And that is from which you came, from which we emerged. It's our lineage, our line, our heritage, her story. It is his story also, but his story is written. Hers is in the lineage. This planet. We have a heartbeat that when we wake up, it beats in spite of our consciousness. It's always beating. It is tuned into that frequency. And it operates from that divine frequency, that pulse. The quartz crystals they use in watches, they have that pulse. The melanin is a receptor of the pulse. It turns it into life. And this is how and why we exist, because of the pulse. When we dance, it's around the pulse. It's with the pulse. It's what sustains us, and we have to learn to sustain it in order to exist in this plane on this planet. And until we do, we're going to run up on these calamities of nature, these coronaviruses, these environmental upheavals, these storms of destruction. They're going to keep happening because this pulse doesn't negotiate with anyone. It is. And we exist because of it. We are not going to take it over and destroy it and turn it into something else. It's the pulse of the universe. Viable knowledge. Reference Dr. Radine Harris. Viable knowledge as it relates to bloodline, phenotype, and indigenousness is knowledge about the inheritance to land by birth. Education about one's environment and resources for the production of sustainable living systems that maintain, support, and protect the perpetual existence of human and environmental life. We are man. We're here to develop this land. As we develop it, it develops us. It sustains us, and we live in divine order to this. And it is not something that you can just get away from. Decide you're going to have a job and work for a corporation, and they're spewing toxins into the environment and killing ourselves and killing yourself, destroying everything about us, and we're just going to do that until we can't no more, until it crashes. That's not the way it works. That's not what's going to happen. And nature is forcing us to reflect and to stop, to come back into frequency with the divine order to our viable knowledge. Now, understanding of our American ancestors and how we function on this land, Turtle Island, how we function here, where we are now, North, Central, and South, we have to understand what the Aboriginal American cultures did, who they were, and how they functioned in the environment that we're functioning in right now, in spite of nature. We have to flow with nature, or nature will take us over and eliminate us and create another system. Corn was cultivated in North America as early as 3600 BCE from New Mexico to Massachusetts. Corn is a food indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, and this is comes from a book by Hugh Murphy called Foods Indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. Corn being in every group from Massachusetts to New Mexico. The earliest corn remnants of a cob were found in the Tehuacan Valley in Mexico and date back to 7,000 years ago. It's been developed by American innovation, developed from a single-eared wild grass found in America. So it takes time. It took much time to develop it from something that has one ear, a small, one little fruit, one tiny kernel on a blade of grass, to a grass that stands 7 feet tall and produces cobs with hundreds of kernels on them, or thousands of kernels. It took much time and much understanding of your environment, understand the cycles and the frequencies of nature, to develop that into something that feeds millions and that feeds the world. because a big part of corn is what's allowed to develop the rest of the world into economies through agriculture and through being able to feed all those people in these other countries. Again, Aboriginal American cultures domesticated manioc, juca. It was developed 10,000 years ago. So this is even before corn. Developed in the savannas of Brazil, feeding our tribes and our Aboriginal American people. We're the developers of viable systems through understanding timing, frequency, divine order, and developing a lunar or a solar calendar that functions in divine order and timing, telling us when to reap, when to sow, when to plant, when to harvest, when to take and plant again, so that we can perpetuate our existence on this plane. This is what ancestrally we are, the developers of life. Civilizations develop from agricultural societies. In order to sustain villages and societies, a calendar has to be established. It is usually around planetary movements of the sun and moon's equinoxes, and an agricultural schedule of sowing and reaping, planting and harvesting, in precise timing and having to do with the cycles of nature, which comes to measurements of time. So our development of these staple crops and learning how to successfully do this over and over again in function and frequency with the divine order gave us an understanding of time through our metabolisms, through the movement and the passage of celestial bodies, through the waxing and waning cycles of the moon, which lead to tiny observations done over these thousands and thousands of years, which allowed us to get a rhythm and come back into divine timing, into the rhythm of the universe, which allowed us to sustain ourselves perpetually. Through this process, we have to know where we are in time today, because we are re-emerging from a slumber and from the rule of empirical military commercial society, which imposed itself on us and enslaved us. 13 years before colonization, all of our cultures came together in solidifying a record of their existence, their ideas, their calendars, and their systems of viability. And they encapsulated that into something called Tonalama. So, to give you an understanding of what is this thing, Tonalama, it's this wheel I have behind me. The Tonalama is an Aztec calendar system that is much more than a calendar system. It's the encapsulation and record of calendar and down to the minute, down to the moment. It's the understanding of calendar all the way to minute potentials, and to understand that time has been mapped out because it's understood in cycles and how it works. So this gives us an understanding of our identity in cosmic terms, because the Aztec Tonalama is the culmination of all of the calendars of Turtle Island. It was through our cooperation from the north, the west, the south, the east, all of our cultures coming together and holding a conference to develop something that would keep a record of who they were for today, because we knew that this would happen to us. How did our ancestors know? Well, they had their hands on the pulse, and they came to understand the pulse. So cosmic identity gives us knowledge of our reflection, of knowing that we are individuals, but we are individuals reflected to each other. We are like the cells of a body. We are part of a larger body of humanity and part of a larger body of consciousness in the order of the cosmos. I am you. You are me. We wear these masks to look at each other, to discuss and to exchange energies, to exist in this material realm. But we are truly consciousness, the creator manifesting in its many forms, wearing many masks. So we have to understand our ancestors understood their timing on the planet in nature through their understanding of man and woman and understanding of the woman particularly. In order for you to exist in this land, you have to know how to exist from this land. You have to know how to get the land to give you what you want, how to identify when to do this, what to do, what to eat, what not to eat, where to go, where not to go. And in terms of knowing the land, that's how you can develop it to its full potential. In order for us to perpetuate as people, as tribal units, as people who know who they are, and perpetuate their way of being, their cultures forward, we have to build families. And we're rebuilding our families in spite of everything that has happened to us. So a man has to see himself in his woman has to see herself in a man. They have to know themselves to know each other and to reflect that love in order to build together viability in nature. So this is why it was so important for us in our family units to understand our women, to understand the land and how they had a tie to each other. It's mostly the women who do the juca cassava cultivation, the moon calendar. They know with their bodies. But in order for us to understand that, to help them to grow our societies, we have to start with the basis, and that's between man, woman, and land, creator, planet. Our understanding of this is what allows us to expand, to grow, and to exist sustainably in our society. So this comes back again to viable knowledge. Viable knowledge maintains the collective conscious resolve of a people to maintain and protect the perpetuation of life and the environment which supports life. That's what viable knowledge is. It's how we maintain our energy, our collective conscious resolve of our people to protect the perpetuation of life in our environment which supports us. Viable knowledge stops genocide and allows for security in the collective to correct the mistakes of the past towards taking corrective action. It allows the people to know why their lives are being disrespected and rights violated. Why has our background, our creeds and our tribal units and our way of government been under siege? Because our knowledge and our pedigree is what allowed us to create the staples of life. They hijacked the staples of life. And so our system has been perverted. Tried to destroy us of our knowledge of ourselves so that we are perpetuating a system of consumption which foreign entities can enrich themselves from. So we know what's happening to us. It's genocide. And our viable knowledge will strengthen our collective resolve, our resolve as indigenous American, as Aboriginal people, as Taino people, as people who know the time, know what has happened, what is happening, and have a resolve to change it, to perpetuate themselves, and to perpetuate their system and their culture and their way of seeing their existence. Viable knowledge is law. The law of nature. Our writing down of law is an imitation of the law that we observe in nature. The rules. What is in order, what isn't permissible, and why. In nature, you pay a price. You don't eat, or something else eats you. Without this knowledge, the people are reduced to complete self-absorption, egotisticalness, selfishness, and consumption. And what do they call you out here? Consumers. You're an American citizen, you're a consumer. Because you don't have viable knowledge. You got to be a producer consumer. Everyone consumes, but you got to be a producer consumer. And that's where power is over your own circumstances, over your own economics. So our viable knowledge is understanding that this melanin should be working the green. And we should be working with the systems in nature through our timing and our intuitions and our natural inclinations to develop this life, to create other systems, commercial systems, because we have to function in this society, that are derived from our natural abilities, our God-given talents, and our talents are given through our physical phenotype and functions and system of our DNA, which is tuned towards developing nature and this plant life and creating our helping to perpetuate our divine balance in nature. The covenant of life, the absolute truth or essence of nature. The planetary principles that dwell within all living essences and governs absolute and infinite reality. It is the cosmic unconditional right of inheritance to all planetary and human life forms, belonging to an eco-land system for sustaining the perpetuation of planetary magnetic pulse vibration through the perpetuation of planetary human life on the planet within the universe. So this is the covenant of life. You exist as part of a contract, an agreement that nature made with itself and with all living things. It's an unconditional inheritance. You get the inheritance of living in this, existing here, in this environment, because you have the right and the purpose and place of belonging to an eco-land system that helps to sustain perpetual magnetic pulse, which is the vibration. You know, everything is vibrating, and this is known in physics. But through this pulse is what maintains the timing of the universe. And that's what leads to the perpetuation of human life, is your place within the land system, within the planet, within the ecosystem, in the universe. It's the only reason you exist. So if you don't honor the covenant of life, which is covenant, it's a contract, it's an agreement to why you exist, then there's no reason for you to exist. There are laws. The covenant laws. The covenant of planetary life is the essential viable facts about planetary order for life that is shared by all people on the planet Earth. So all cultures, all people have observations of this written into their laws, their religions, their understanding, their governmental systems. The covenant laws are the unconditional rights above man's law, established by God or a cosmic universe, called sovereign rights. What are sovereign rights? Well, your sovereign rights is to exist because you exist. You're given this already. You eat, you breathe, you walk, you talk. You understand? These are sovereign rights of existence. These rights established by God are recognizable by all races and the foundation of all religions. So, because we all are here, we all exist, and we're all here together, we have to understand those are covenant laws. That we exist and that another is going to exist. That we should eat and that they should eat. that we should exchange in dialogue, that we can run, jump, swim, that we can plant. Okay, these are our sovereign rights to create, to perpetuate existence, to have our culture and our systems. So, what is genocide? Genocide is the planned annihilation of a race or religious or ethnic group by a variety of actions aimed specifically at undermining the systems essential to the group's survival as a group. Attacks on political, social institutions, culture, language, and national feeling, religious practice and beliefs, and the economic existence of a group constitutes genocide. Even non-lethal attacks that undermine the liberty, dignity, and personal security of members of a group is genocide if it threatens the group's vitality. Acts of ethnocide is after genocide, and what we're in right now is genocide and ethnocide, or the process of destroying a group's culture without killing off its bearers continues genocide. So when they don't let you be who you want to be, when you can't practice your religious belief or your cultural beliefs, your cultural practice, your music, your language, that's called ethnocide. But at the same time, ethnocide is genocide. But genocide starts and ends with our choices to be ourselves based on our knowledge of ourselves. So because I'm giving this message and I'm talking about this, and we are having these conversations in our society, then we know what has happened. And we are knowing ourselves, because in order to know ourselves, we have to know how we got here and what has happened. It starts and ends with our choices to practice our culture, to go back to healthy, sustainable ways of living, to understand our knowledge, our place in the eco-land system and our viability, and to adhere to that as our value and not as simply circumstance. Truly, what time is it? So we know that we are off balance. We know that the planet is undergoing physical change from our presence, our use of fossil fuels, our dumping of toxic elements, our destruction of other life, our extinction of other forms of life through hunting and through poisons. We know our lifestyles of consumption are keeping us in imbalance. We know that our people are suffering. People all over the world, our people, all people are suffering because the planet is suffering and we are on the planet, part of the planet. We are cells of the planet. We know that this isn't sustainable because we know that nature will correct itself because it's about viability and it existing. In order for it to continue to exist, the consciousness of all that is, because everything here is given consciousness, because it exists to be perceived and is perceived and perceives itself. In order for that to be, life to exist, it has to do what it has to do to correct the systems. So we know our planet is suffering, our people are suffering, and suffering is a state, it's a phase, but it's not sustainable because it needs to be corrected and will be corrected in order for systems to be viable to perpetuate themselves. So it isn't viable. Any of our ways that we're living, how we've been existing here. This is why we're going through these coronaviruses and all these things. So we know what time it is. We're off balance. It isn't viable. Our next step is to correct this. And we correct it first in ourselves and in our families through understandings of cosmic identity, viable knowledge, and values. So what are the benefits of this viable knowledge? We can identify distorted info. We can see what clarity, balance, and resolve is. We can see with clarity, balance, and resolve. We can recognize our past mistakes. We can stop destruction and genocide from the promotion of destructive attitudes in the present for the future. We can stop ourselves from destroying our environment, littering, and commercial sponsored destruction of environments through toxic dumping and pollution, through our selfish attitudes and how we move and engage in our transportation, how we treat each other, how we treat other living beings. We can stop the destruction and promote healthy attitudes that sustain life, that keep our children here and keep us here living and alive in our eco land system. And we have witnessed the effects of loss in conscious resolves because we understand what's happening. So we know when we have conscious resolve. We know when things are not going right because we have that knowledge, that viable knowledge, that knowledge of self, viable knowledge. So we have to keep that in mind because stagnation is death. You are never standing in one place. You're either moving towards or your goal or away from your goal. You're either moving towards death or sustaining your life. So when we talk about these truths, we have to understand what is truth, absolute truth, like an affidavit, a statement of truth. But what is absolute truth? Absolute truth is the essence of life or nature for the viability, fertility of the eco-land system. So viability means it's fertile. It can perpetuate itself. Like a fertile woman, a fertile mother. She's not barren. She can have children. She can reproduce. She can form society. It's represented by the feminine principle. Absolute truth is represented by the feminine principle. Atave. It is directed by emotion and natural instincts in the heart to soul, fertility. It is represented in women. It is represented through the woman. It's the essence of life for the viability of eco-land system. You cannot have a family, you cannot have society without the woman. So absolute truth is represented by the feminine principle. Again, it's directed by emotion and natural instincts. That's an intelligence of knowledge in the heart to the soul. It's woman. Atave. Absolute truth. It's what is. Absolute reality. Absolute reality is the condition of planetary harmony and vibrational balance of the natural expression of magnetic pulse to manifest within the eco-land system. Ha-hom. It's represented by the male principle, by the man. It's physical intellect, physical knowledge. Yoka'u bagwa marakoto / man. It equals protection and projection. So the condition of planetary harmony for the perpetuation, the natural expression of magnetic pulse. So pole to pole, okay, the North Pole, the South Pole, they let off a vibration and a frequency, and its manifestation is magnetic pulse. This is the pulse of the planet. That pulse, those waves form the spiral, which wraps around the earth and lets off spirals and spirals and spirals, big spirals and little spirals, which manifest in the Fibonacci sequence, which manifests in golden ratio, which manifests in the divine order and proportion, a manifestation of our DNA forming our bodies in our human form on the planet from this magnetic pulse. The condition of the harmony and vibrational balance of this expression of magnetic pulse within the system, the ability and condition, the pruning, the developing, the conditioning is represented in man. It's the temperance. It's represented by the male principle, physical intellect, protection and projection. So a man develops through consciousness, through conscious thought and projection and protection of what is, develops systems, develops the village, develops the farm, develops the family members, the members within the family, the woman, in order to take all of the potentials and organize them into a reality, a perception, a culture, a harmony that is a natural expression of magnetic pulse to manifest within the eco-land system. So is that not beautiful? Absolute truth is the woman. Absolute reality is the man. All of these things together are what give us the expression of absolute truth divided by absolute reality equaling expression. And this is Dr. Radine's work also. This formula. So absolute truth divided by absolute reality equals expression. It equals what we see, equals the creation of culture, equals the creation of ways. Absolute reality is determined by how well absolute truth is adhered to and manifested in nature. So, absolute reality, the best living you can have, is determines how well you adapt to the absolute truth, to the nature. How well a man can develop his family, his tribe, his nation is determined by how well he can understand his woman. It's determined by how well he can understand his situation in divine order. The male principle is balanced by the female principle in its measure or adherence to the laws and commandments of nature, magnetic pulse, frequency, vibration. So here we go. I know a lot of men, you might not want to hear it, but you have to understand it. Because you have no purpose. In order for you to be a male, we all start off as female. Because that's absolute truth. Beyond this Western way of thinking or religious systems and all this, absolute truth is through the female. Because we're on a planet. The planet bears life. And our female bears life. We all start off as female embryos. In order for you to become a male, temperature has to rise and be sustained for a long period of time for those physiological changes to come in that make you into your balls drop, your penis comes, your dick comes out, and you become a male, and the testosterone is elevated, and you are manifested in the form of a male. That happens for a specific purpose. Because our purpose as men is to learn, temper, and develop to create our absolute reality and cultural expression of all the things that we have. To perpetuate our existence, the existence of our ancestors, to be the progenitors and the protectors of this reality. That's why we're here. It's not just to drive fast cars and sleep with women, or to get drunk, or to get high, or to bodybuild. Okay? We're here to develop this. It's our purpose. We're stronger for the work. And this is why we're here, why our ancestors existed, why we developed our ways of living. So we have to know why we're here. So this is what cosmic identity and systems of viability and all this is, to understand why you're on this planet. Beyond just having fun and consuming, why you exist. And we all have to have this knowledge, because this is what keeps us alive. It's the rhythm. It's the interaction of these factors. Harmony equals rhythm, negative and positive. It's the interplay of negative and positive. Okay, not good, bad, negative and positive. Negative being formed, representing the form of the woman, positive in the form of the male. Absolute truth, negative. Absolute reality, positive, because created from it. Synergy equals creation. Divided through fertility. Fertility and the working of these principles equal creation, which is synergy. So we're here to work in synergy. There's males, there's females. We have our culture, our identity, our people. I have my woman. You have your woman. We are different phenotypes, we're different. We have a purpose here. We have to understand what we're here for and what we're doing. People are trying to go back to healthy green lifestyles in sync with nature. They're trying to go back to what we already have in our lineage, our inheritance of our understanding of our cosmic identity, our absolute truth and reality. This is what life is about. Rhythm and harmony in the interplay of our principles to be productive and fertile, create fertility in nature for it to perpetuate itself. That is our purpose. So on this planet, in understanding our environment, every landmass has a purpose and a vibratory frequency that falls in line with magnetic vibration and frequency, positive pole to negative pole. So, let's identify the purpose of the following environments within continents as they relate to Earth's ecosystem. The desert. People know the desert's hot and it's dry. You got mountains, you got dunes. What's the purpose of a desert? Well, the purpose of a desert is to reflect heat. The balance on the planet is that it is subject to intense heat from the sun, which after that falls off, then it's night, and it's the light that comes from the moon, but it absorbs the heat of the energy. The energy produces heat and reflects that heat back off. And that's the purpose of that on this planet, to sustain the balance of oxygen and forces that sustain all life. The rainforest acts as the lungs of the planet. All of these forms of green life absorb the radiation from the heat from the sun, from the energy from the sun. They take this in, they take the other elements of the biosphere, they produce oxygen through the nutrients, through the chlorophyll and the minerals in order to get rid of carbon dioxide, and they produce this environment which other living things can breathe. So they're the lungs of the earth. They produce the oxygen which circulates the whole earth through the waves of magnetic pulse vibration, which create the weather, which push everything around in our environment. So the same way that green creates that life there, the melanin does this for us in our understanding of how to work with the pulse vibration of frequency through nature in the world. Every part of the world has its functions, its rainforests, its deserts, its savannas, its plains. Everything has a purpose. And there's planetary frequency. The energy created from the friction created by opposition to the polarity existing in all forms as an essence of planetary life. BLOODLINE contains the instructions to sync with Earth's magnetic pulse frequency to receive instructions and energy from Earth and universe. Clearly understanding, environment changes, we change. So our BLOODLINE contains the instructions to sync with the Earth coding. So the Earth has a code, we have a code. So it's from magnetic pulse vibration, pulses, and it gets transmitted and transformed into our organism as an animal form, goes through our melanin. Pulses transmit life through the form of the chlorophyll, through the plants and how they manifest. And all these pulse vibrations manifest in different forms of life, in different covenants. So we're part of that. That changes, we change. Our planetary frequency. So what is the purpose of man? Every segment of land has a human collective indigenous to it within the vibrational frequency of the eco-land system, designed to operate within the polarity of the planet, in parentheses, symmetry, duality as above, so below, Fibonacci sequence. Again, understanding symmetry, divine proportion, duality as above, so below, the union of opposites, and the Fibonacci sequence, which is the union of opposites, because it flows one way, then flows another way, then flows another way, and that's frequency. So every landmass has a form of human collective that is indigenous to it. The fact corresponds with all principles of planetary order. Polarity friction, north and south, creates a magnetic pulse. It is from the friction of the magnetic pulse that creates opposition in energy, balance or imbalance. The opposition also represents the races indigenous to the land masses. So different forms of man have different purposes within different environments. Some of those purposes are sustaining. Some of those purposes are initiating. Some of it is negative. Some of it is positive. Some of the races work in positive building forms. Others work in negative forms to maintain order, live by hunting. It's not good or bad. It's negative and positive. And man works in both negative and positive ways within eco-land system. What determines whether it's perpetuated or not, whether life continues, is balance. So in order for us to continue our existence on this planet, we have to establish balance and remain within balance. This is what our turning to the ways of our ancestors and green ways of life and cosmic identity and viable systems is about: balance. Because as long as the polarity of opposition between the forces of life and death are kept in balance, the forward progression of life will continue operating in the highest planetary frequency for the planet in the universe. Depending on the polarity position in geography, the concept of absolute truth creates a unique manifestation of absolute reality to the human collective. So depending on where you are on the planet, the absolute truth, the environment, the woman, helps to create a unique manifestation of absolute reality, of the perception of the environment, of the culture, and to the human collective. Imbalance. Our adopted nation state and corporate controlled culture and lifestyle has erased our heritage, culture, and identity, and inheritance of purpose within the planetary covenant of life. This inheritance is the basis of our understanding of our purpose in eco-land system geography, based on our phenotypical characteristics and genetic alignment to environment. So, a lifestyle that we've adopted after colonization, after the forming of these countries, these nations that are called now based on the paradigm of the European paradigm, have erased us of our viable knowledge and our adherence to eco-land system and magnetic frequency pulse. And we have to resync ourselves to come back into balance based on who we are physically. This is our basis of our understanding of our purpose in our land system, based on our physical phenotypical characteristics and our genetic alignment to environment. Okay? So how we are physically, how our phenotype is, tells us how we're supposed to be living, where we should be in our adherence to to the planetary covenant. It's not just about a job. You can do things on your off time, but when your complete existence is catered towards perpetuating these commercial and false systems that are not in balance, then eventually nature is not going to take it anymore. It'll just eliminate all of us. And another form of conscious life will take its place that will adhere to the planetary covenant, because that's what we're on. We're on a planet with a covenant. Why wouldn't we be humbled and tempered by nature when we exist only as a result of the covenant? We only get oxygen as a result of the covenant of life and the chlorophyll-based life forms doing their job, giving us oxygen as a sustenance for the rest of our metabolic functions. It's not no joke. The truth is, we have to come back to the lifestyles of our ancestors and to our understanding and mode of operating within the environment to perpetuate the environment and the healthy living systems that perpetuate our life and all other forms of life in order to continue alive. This is why you have these European modes of thought and kind of Eastern modes of thought where they're trying to, and this is everywhere now, but it's that value set that is trying to synthesize life and then find another body to transfer to, because they don't know. And if we continue acting like we don't know when we're physically manifested in the form to know, by ignoring nature and going with these false ideology and commercial systems and completely ignoring our function within nature, then we will go just like them. They're trying to find a silicon chip to transfer their soul into. What are we trying to do? Go behind them in the chip? Are we trying to perpetuate our existence and our children's existence naturally as we have always existed before and after and always will? 10,000 years of yucca, 7,000 years of corn. And it developed over thousands of years of observation, of understanding the planet, the stars, the moon, our alignment to that, to understand time, to understand our place within time, forming our culture and our understanding of the covenant that we have to maintain in order to exist, to be happy, to have perception and the gift of life in this form. Balance has to be restored. We have to go back to the ways of our ancestors in order to perpetuate our cosmic systems of balance, in order to perpetuate and sustain our viability in this environment. Now you know, versus what you might have believed. This is Cacique Tureygua Taino Bomatum Hahom. I appreciate you for listening to this message. I appreciate you for seeking and doing what your essence is telling you to do, to seek viability and healthy ways of living through the knowledge of your ancestors and the knowledge of our cosmic systems of balance and identity for our viability in this land, in our land, for our future generations. Thank you. And I put energy towards you to adhere to the ways of your ancestors and to build a future that's green, a future that is full of promise and fertility. Red and green, they're basically the same thing. It's the promise of fertility as a culture and as a people. Hahom Bomatum Maurika.